Welcome to the Change Life Destiny podcast, where healthcare is being reimagined one conversation at a time. We spotlight the people, innovations, and ideas moving us from sick care to self-care and from reactivity to true prevention. This season was recorded live at the CLD conference, a place to connect, learn, and build a new future together. Get inspired at changelifedestiny.com. Let's dive in.
Well, Dr. Habib, welcome to the Change Life Destiny podcast. It's a pleasure to have you. And tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm honored to be here. I'm speaking at the conference at Changing Life and Destiny, and I'm speaking on the topic of vagus nerve and vagus nerve stimulation. It's really my passion. I am a chiropractor by profession, and it was a chance encounter with a friend and mentor of mine that brought me to understand what health truly was. And it was this chance encounter where my life was changed in a very positive way. At the time when I graduated from chiropractic college, I weighed nearly 250 pounds. I had high blood pressure. I was borderline diabetic. I had IBS. I had tons of inflammation. And this was in my 20s.
I was going to ask, that sounds like a lot for a young person, right? When you're going to chiropractor college. Did you go here locally to Parker or?
I did not. I'm Canadian. I'm from Toronto. I went to Canadian Memorial Chiropractic College. Wonderful friends, wonderful experience. And it was great, but there was a lot of stress, right? When you're in chiropractic college.
I understand there's only two, right? Is that one of them or only two in the United States?
In Canada, there's only two chiropractic colleges, only one that's English speaking. And the second one, the French speaking one, is very small. Okay.
So what was your lifestyle then? What do you think that had you at that stress level? What would you say was stress?
I think I was in a survival state. I think I was stuck in a state of constantly just needing to be in survival mode. I was dealing with the stress of school. I was dealing with, normal teenage 20-year-old stress.
Yeah.
I was driving back and forth to school. I was living at home with my parents and trying to save some money. But that was even before this, when I was at my undergrad. Same idea, lots of stress, mental, internal stress. And I think that contributed to the lifestyle becoming more of a just basic, not very strong, not very positive experience.
So stress is normal for all of us. We all have it. We all experience it. But correct me if I'm wrong. What you're saying is there is such a thing as an overload if we're constantly in a state of stress, because I've heard this. Am I correct? Is that where we're going?
Absolutely.
So being in a constant state of stress causes what?
It pushes us into a state where we're stuck in fight or flight. And that fight or flight state can be, it's a good thing to have, but you can't be in that state all the time.
Right. We need it as humans to survive. That's what's helped us survive. But yeah. So is adrenal exhaustion
it's a big part of it? Absolutely. And adrenal exhaustion happens as a secondary effect, because adrenals are part of the hormonal system, right?
Okay.
And that hormonal system has inputs to determine which hormones are going to be released, and adrenal fatigue and exhaustion will come secondarily to some of those other issues. But what's upstream of that is what signals are coming up from the body organs? What signals are coming up from your breath pattern? What signals are coming up to your brain that then relay through that hormone system that then go through your HPA axis? And those signals that come up are the ones that tell us or dictate whether we're going to go towards that fight or flight state or if we're going to go towards a rest, digest, and recover state.
Now break down for me HPA axis.
HPA is hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. So hypothalamus of the brain to the pituitary gland, which goes down to the adrenals, and that goes through the bloodstream.
Okay, that's the first time I've heard that term. So you're young, you're in your 20s, and you are in this, you said parasympathetic, sympathetic mode. To just explain what those are a little bit.
We have this system called the autonomic nervous system, which is essentially all of the internal processes of our body are going to be taking place without our conscious thought. We're not consciously thinking about breathing all the time or digesting our food or detoxifying, right? So those unconscious or subconscious functions happen automatically The system that dictates that is the autonomic nervous system.
Okay.
And there's two parts to the autonomic nervous system. One is the sympathetic, which drives more of a fight or flight survival response, which is necessary, but we can't be there all the time. We need to be able to shift to a parasympathetic, rest, digest, and recover state. And the vagus nerve is the nerve that dictates whether we're in that parasympathetic state or not. The signals for the rest, digest, recover state run through the vagus nerve.
And so the vagus nerve, so so getting in the parasympathetic mode, is that something that we normally do? Like, is there triggers for it? I understand, like you said, digestion. So when we eat, after we eat, the whole feeling calm and feeling, oh, I'm so full. Is that what that is?
That's part of it. We need to shift into that state to turn on the digestive process.
Okay.
Right? So we need to learn. And ideally, we should be able to go between these two states, the sympathetic and parasympathetic, very easily. Should almost be like a dimmer switch. The problem is, and the easier way to kind of understand this, or the analogy that I use, is the sympathetic state, the fight or flight state, is more like the accelerator in your car, and the vagus nerve and the parasympathetic state are like the brakes. And you need to have both functioning. If you don't have good functioning sympathetic state, don't have a good functioning accelerator, the car is a hunk of junk. It's not going to do any good. It's sitting in the garage, not going anywhere.
Right.
But if you don't have brakes, that system becomes a danger to society because you cannot slow the car down. And that's what's happening internally because of the amount of stressors and challenges that people are experiencing. We're being pushed heavily towards that sympathetic state all the time. The brakes are being burnt out.
Yeah.
And so we need to shift into that state. So yes, when we go into digestive processes and we actually are calm and relaxed and we eat in a state where we're in rest, digest state, then we're in that parasympathetic state. That good feeling, that calm feeling, that's what we're looking for.
Yeah, I love that analogy. I'm a car guy myself, right? And something I always tell people is the fact that your truck can haul however much it can haul doesn't mean it should be hauling it all the time constantly, right?
Exactly.
Because that's just going to reduce your vehicle's life to nothing.
Exactly.
So our bodies are the same way, right? I mean,
there's only so much
we
you
can be in that sympathetic mode, but we shouldn't always be. Right?
The key is to train your body to be able to switch between these two. So stress isn't a bad thing if you learn how to control or manage that stress. And all the things that push us into that sympathetic state, we want to be able to handle them. But if we're stuck there and we can't get back, that's where the problem occurs, because the signals that come through the sympathetic state turn on inflammation in the body.
Yeah.
That's
so how do we do that? Take us back to you're at that stage and you said you had a mentor. How did you come about? The vagus nerve, is that would you say the most important thing in this lesson?
I believe that the vagus nerve is the pathway to optimal health through the control of inflammation. Okay. If we can learn to control inflammation, if we can learn to control the signals that are going to the immune system through the brain, utilizing simple tools, which we'll get into, we'll be able to create that shift towards this parasympathetic state. And the key thing to remember is we cannot heal when we're stuck in fight or flight. Our bodies cannot heal. If we want to heal, we have to be able to turn on that parasympathetic state. So we need strategies to be able to do that.
So tell us about those. What are some of those strategies?
When I first had that mentor situation and started to learn about what was going on, I realized I was stuck in that sympathetic state. And what I started to do was research the vagus nerve a little bit, research the fact that the role of the vagus nerve is inflammatory control through a system called the cholinergic anti-inflammatory pathway. And the way to turn that system on, the way to turn on the vagus nerve that I learned, the most important one, is controlling your breath, breathing. And how you control your breath, how you breathe dictates whether you're going sympathetic or parasympathetic.
Really?
That's the biggest takeaway that I've had.
So layman's terms, again, a quick... The vagus nerve, right? It comes from where? From our cervicals or at the base? The brainstem.
Brainstem.
Right?
So it's just above the cervicals, and it's coming out from there. It's one of the 10 or 12 pairs of cranial nerves. We have 12 pairs of cranial nerves. 11 of them stay in the head and neck area. So they're doing optic nerve, trigeminal nerve, facial nerve,
right,
glossopharyngeal, and the 10th is the vagus.
That all comes from the cerebellum, right? Which is the back, and then it
Cerebellum's
extends.
behind. The brainstem is just in front of the cerebellum.
Okay.
That's where they're all branching out from.
Got it.
The vagus nerve comes out from there. It has a few branches in the head and neck area. It goes to the skin of the ear.
Through the ear.
Goes to the pharyngeal and laryngeal muscles, so the throat muscles, and maintains whether we have ability to tension or lengthen our vocal cords and create pitch and tone. So I can go really, really low or really, really high because I can tension or lengthen. And that's vagus nerve signals that are doing that. But that's
Well,
only
it controls
5%.
all our body, right? I mean,
Exactly.
hands, organs, vital organs.
So it goes more visceral. It doesn't quite have as many muscle controls.
Okay.
And that's where more of the spinal nerves work. So the nerves that come out from the spine and the spinal cord, those go out to the hands, to the muscles. And they just have one, usually two functions between motor and sensory. So they're taking in signals from the skin and they're sending out signals to the muscles. But the vagus nerve is different. The vagus nerve comes out. It's the only nerve that leaves the head cavity from the cranial nerves. It comes down and it's alongside your carotid artery and your jugular vein in your neck. So if you go and you find your pulse, you're actually beside your vagus nerve. So just with a pulse check, you'll be able to physically be nearby.
Which is a pretty key place, right? Again,
That's exactly it. That was the biggest hint for me to note just how important this nerve was. When the vagus nerve is physically located beside the blood vessels that bring blood to and from the brain, and they're in a structure together, just those three things in a supported structure called the carotid sheath, it's kind of a clue how important this nerve is.
Right. So what are some of the keys that you would advise people to, be able to control this?
For sure.
We were talking about breathing.
Yes.
Which is amazing.
Yes.
Something so simple, but yet it's key, right?
Totally. Totally. So the vagus nerve comes out of the neck area and it goes down to your heart, to your lungs, to your stomach, your gallbladder, your liver, your pancreas, your small intestine, your large intestine, and your kidneys, and indirectly to your spleen. Literally every visceral organ has a direct, or except for the spleen, indirect connection to the vagus nerve or to the brain through this nerve.
I would say.
That's literally why it's called the vagus nerve. Vagus comes from the root word vague, which when anatomists were looking at this, it was called the wandering nerve. And so the breath really is an important factor here. So breathing pattern dictates whether we're going to turn that nerve on or off. Think of it this way. If we hear a loud noise, something that stresses us out, our first reaction is going to always be quick breath in, tighten up through our mouth, ready to go, right? We're ready to either fight or run away from the stressor. But when that threat goes away, we take a sigh of relief.
Yeah, you exhale. Okay.
Immediately. Think of it that way. So now when we have that stressor, when we inhale, we're turning towards the fight or flight system slightly, just even on a normal breathing pattern. We want to shift towards an exhale. As we do that exhale, we shift towards parasympathetic, turn on the vagus nerve. So the breath pattern is going to dictate this. So longer inhales, shorter exhales are going to be more time in sympathetic state.
Okay.
Shorter inhales, longer exhales are going to be more time in parasympathetic state. Learning to breathe with that pattern, short inhale, long exhale, is really, really key. But there's two other things we need to do here. Our breath should be three things. I've already said longer exhales. We only have one breathing tube. We only have nose hairs in our nose. We only have teeth in our mouth. We don't eat through our nose. We shouldn't breathe through our mouth. We should be breathing through our nose. Air comes in, it's filtered by the nose hairs.
Yeah.
It goes into the sinuses, it's warmed, it's humidified, and then it comes down to the lungs where it's far more ready to be absorbed into the bloodstream. So oxygen should come in that way, and carbon dioxide should be able to be released, ideally through the nose, but we have a backup plan if we need it, which is the mouth. Breathing through our mouth is going to push us heavily towards sympathetic state.
Really?
Breathing through our nose is heavily, vaguely activating. It's also really good for nitric oxide. So the combination is huge here. But our breath should be nasal. Our breath should be long exhales. And then there's a very important muscle that most people aren't using when they breathe, which is your diaphragm muscle. The muscle that separates the chest cavity from the abdomen. Those, as the diaphragm pumps, when we're utilizing it effectively, we actually feel belly expansion, ever so slightly.
Right.
Belly breathing. This is literally the idea. So our breath should be three things: nasal, diaphragmatic, longer exhales. The unfortunate thing is most people are breathing with their chest and using upper back muscles. And that's why so many people have tight upper back muscles, poor posture, being on our cell phones all day, being on our laptops all day. These are all factors that are going to affect our breathing pattern. The breath is the key to whether we go sympathetic or parasympathetic. And that's the things you need to do.
So I've heard that before, but not in as far as the diaphragm goes. And I've heard that in voice lessons, right? When people sing, that's where they sing from, or they should. Am I correct?
100%.
So that's not something we practice normally. So singers do, right?
Yep.
Trained, but so how do we turn into remembering these things? Because we talked about how some of these are innately, we learn them, and some we learn. So how do we shift from what we're doing to remembering how to do it right?
We have to learn to catch ourselves. There's devices out there that can help us to do this. There are biofeedback devices, things like the Sensate device, things like the Apollo Neuro device. Those are biofeedback reminder tools, which are great. They're phenomenal if you can use them or keep them on for many hours a day, which is for some people a little challenging.
Right.
But catching yourself in those moments and learning to practice mini breathwork sessions throughout the day is really great, particularly if you tie it to the bookends of your day. Start your day with some sort of breathwork, end your day with some sort of breathwork, and do it sometime in the middle. Those three spots will often have such a profound effect that you won't need to practice it too often.
Wow.
So teaching yourself to do this, the pattern that I love, the most simple pattern that is easy for people to generally do, is a box breathing method. 4 seconds in, 4 second hold, 4 seconds out, 4 second hold. If you do that for a period of time, you're going to slow everything down. A slower breath rate is also heavily attached to parasympathetic activation.
Is that why yoga is so, popular, and because it involves a lot of that breathing? But
everything is yoga is entirely based on breath.
That's what I was going to say. There is a difference between body and you can exercise just your breath. I've seen people do that and separate the, activity and breathing combined and just the breathing alone.
It's more of a yin yoga type of practice. That yin yoga is a very calming effect. In fact, the yin and yang is literally, yang is sympathetic, yin is parasympathetic. So you teach yourself to be able to shift between the two, and that's what yoga is built on. Pilates built on the same thing. It's about breathing patterns, but teaching yourself to breathe even when you're in postural circumstances that are more challenging. So it's teaching yourself to breathe parasympathetically while under stress.
So breath is important. Doing these special breathing exercises, all towards the vagus nerve. What is there another thing that we should know and we should be doing?
There are dozens and dozens of exercises. Everything is built on breath functionality, but there are tools now that have come out that can physically help you stimulate that vagus nerve in as little as 2 minutes, which is phenomenal. So I'm a big fan of electrical vagus nerve stimulation, especially the cervical trunk. When we catch that area, there are devices, handheld devices or wearable devices that go directly to that area to help electrically stimulate the vagus nerve through tested and researched, phenomenal, easy tools for people to plug in. So I'm a big fan of the Truvaga device, Truvaga. And Truvaga is a handheld electric vagus nerve stimulator that goes directly on that spot where you find your pulse. And in 2 minutes, it's been shown through fMRI studies, and it's FDA cleared for numerous conditions, to have a vagus nerve activation effect. It helps people to sleep better, think clearer, and just simply be calmer. And it's because it's turning on that parasympathetic state so effectively.
Got it. So breath and then these devices. What else can we do? Is there something that ties dietarily or... So
on the diet side, it's a great question. Most people forget about this, but the acetylcholine is the neurotransmitter that's utilized by the vagus nerve. And acetylcholine has two components that need to come together. Acetyl-CoA, which is produced from proper ideal metabolism of fats and carbohydrates, and mitochondrial function is really important in ensuring that that is occurring. So we want good mitochondrial function. Things like B vitamins can be very beneficial in enabling that. things like carnitine, lipoic acid are phenomenal tools in initiating that acetyl-CoA piece. The other side to this is choline. Choline is a nutrient that we need to bring in. It's not an essential nutrient, but we don't get enough of it. We can't produce enough of it on our own. We need to get it from outside. Now, choline is not an amino acid or anything like that, but it's a nutrient that needs to make its way in. And choline, 90% of American diets are deficient in choline. So if you don't have this signaling molecule, you're not going to get these vagus nerve signals out effectively. So choline, from a diet standpoint, you're going to get from liver, any animal liver, and the best is actually egg yolks. Runny egg yolks are the highest in phosphatidylcholine, which is huge. You're also going to be able to get it from soy lecithin, sunflower lecithin, soy or sunflower. And you want the phosphatidylcholine version, not any of the other choline versions. There's bitartrate and citicholine. They can have effects on the gut and create more of an inflammatory issue because they're salt forms. Phosphatidylcholine is the best by far.
Well, there's a lot to unpack. Tell us how our audience can reach you.
Yeah, you can find me. Instagram's probably the easiest place for social media, Dr. Navaz Habib. You can check out one of my 2 books on the vagus nerve, Upgrade Your Vagus Nerve or Activate Your Vagus Nerve. Both are available everywhere online. And if you want to learn more about working with me or what we do, it's healthupgraded.com, name of my clinic.
Healthupgraded.com. Perfect. Well, doctor, it's been a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
That's a wrap for today's episode of the Change Life Destiny podcast. If you loved what you heard, share it with a friend and follow us for more bold conversations and breakthrough ideas. Ready to take the next step? Visit changelifedestiny.com to join the movement. See you next time, and keep diving in, learning, and leading the change.